Hans Zimmer, you scored three films this year, The Boss Baby, Dunkirk, and Blade Runner 2049. Let's focus on Dunkirk for a while. That score in particular really seemed to resonate with audiences and critics alike. I listened to it in the car, I listened to it on the train. It's just one of those scores that you can just listen to as part of your daily life. That's my feedback. What's the primary feedback that you get about that particular work?
Well, okay, I tell you what I'm secretly proud of. I'm secretly proud of that ever since Chris and Nolan and I started working together, which has been now, I don't know, 15, 16 years,
Yeah.
something like that. We always try to do this thing where we create the sonic world. And what I mean by that is that, you know, that we merge the images with the sound, with the music so completely that you can't, you know, you're nearly listening to things with your eyes. And so I think we finally got there. You know, I love that you're listening to this thing in the car, but I think there is something truly, we've managed to create a new experience. And of you know, if you think about war movies, the war movies of the last 20 or so years, you know, and I've done a few of those, you know, you get the ones that use heroic music and then they use sad music, you know, when somebody dies, etc. Yeah. But mostly they use music very sparingly because they don't know how to use music. Music is a complicated thing, you know, because you're now describing something which is real with music, and music has a way of very easily sentimentalizing something or making something heroic when you don't want it to be heroic, and it's very easy, it manipulates very easily. And I think the thing that Chris set out to do right from the word go was that we were not going to manipulate. And the other thing he set out to do, and it nearly killed me, I mean, I thought I was on it for 7 months, but then actually somebody told me I was on it for 11 months. And when I say 7 months, you know, we're talking every day. You know, there are no weekends when we're working. You know, it's like, you know, it's just full on. But it was Chris's, you know, vision of you know, and vision is a weird word in this case because, you know, vision is the eyes, and all we try to do is actually figure out how we can go and use our ears as much as our eyes in this film. And so I think part of the reactions I've been getting, which I love, is that we sort of sneaked up and got a little closer of really truly making it a whole and making it one experience. And the sound and the music and the visuals are of one storytelling experience. Does that make sense?
It does. That's really
hard to talk about.
I know. It's really hard, but I totally get what you're saying. And for, I mean, you've talked about the shepherd tone in other interviews, I know, but a lot of people probably aren't quite aware of that particular thing that you employed to really ratchet up the tension, because it is a very tense film. I walked out of that feeling like I was ragged, and a lot of that had to do with your score. Can you talk us through that particular element?
I'll talk a little about it, and let me just give you a. All right. So when Chris, James Newton Howard and I did Batman Begins, you know, we sort of figured out a new style for superhero or action movies, etc. You know, and within moments, every other movie was sounding like the way our movies are sounding. After we look, Inception is a great example. There's a story point written in the script about these low brams, the brass sounds. It's a story point. Suddenly it turns up in everybody's trailer. So on this one, we sort of said, you know something, we're going to keep some secrets. But I'll tell you, the way we worked, the way we started, and it really was so hand in hand, so collegial. It was, you know, this was Chris's movie. And at the same time, you know, I really tried to, look, I was torturing him because I really needed answers. So I really felt this is a score that the two of us did together. But it started off with, he said to me, this is going to be a short movie. It's going to be 90 minutes long. but I'm going, wow, we're making Chris. What happened? We're making a short movie. So he was very clear about the structure of it. And so I basically demoed up a 100-minute piece, which sort of became like a grid of tension, you know. But because we were using this weird idea, we talk, you know, Chris has talked about the shepherd tone, so that's the thing that's out. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like, you know, when you watch a barber pole, things keep going up, but endlessly, right? But we're doing mathematically, we're doing something else in the movie, and which is the part I'm not going to sort of quite give away. And even though if I did give it away, good luck anybody who would want to try it. But what happened was nobody had ever done this before, which seemed really exciting at the time. You know, I said to Chris, hey, look, we can try this idea. And he totally went for it. What I didn't know was that nearly like every 10 seconds, it would create a problem that nobody had ever solved because nobody had ever done it. So, you know, and sometimes, and this is again, you know, where I absolutely have to give Chris credit for this. Sometimes I was going to go and, you know, take the easy way out after being up on the same problem, not having gone to sleep for 24 hours. And then I would go home, I'd go, you know, I'd finish my day, I'd go home, grab a bite to eat, go to sleep and dream all night about it. So it never left me. And Chris just wouldn't let me take the easy way out, ever. He said, you know, he said, okay, you came up with this idea, let's go and solve it. Let's go and see it all the way through. And it's that rigorousness, it's that, you know, sticking to a specific idea, which is, you know, what great directors do is they cheer you on, even if you just want to give up, even, you know, because they know if they cheer you on, if they help you solve the problems, we are solving their problems as well. We are making a better film at that moment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, you've collaborated with Christopher 6 times, the 3 Batman films, Inception, and obviously Dunkirk and Interstellar, which is, I'll talk about at the end because that's one of my favorite scores of all time. What is it about him that inspires you? Because you keep returning to each other. Why is that? What is it about that connection that you have with him?
You know, Dunkirk was the hardest thing we ever did. And you know, I mean, he writes about it even in the liner notes. I mean, you know, there were moments where, you know, we were fighting like cats and dogs. But underneath it all is something really simple. There's a friendship, you know, there's a friendship there. And so part of what is really important is that I protect my friend Chris, you know? So it doesn't matter how hard it gets, doesn't matter how, you know, whatever it is. I mean, you know, by protecting the film, or in this case, you know, the job was, you know, let's elevate the story, let's elevate the film. I'm protecting my friend, so it does become really personal at the end of the day. And you want to work with your mates, and you want to work with your mates not only because they're your friends and you know that they protect you. I mean, let me go and do it the other way around. Dark Knight, the Joker theme. I mean, it's that Weasley little insidious sound. It's really quiet. Can you imagine going to executives at a film studio and saying, okay, you guys you just put $200 million on the table for this big summer blockbuster you're hoping for, and this is the, you know, there's this Weasley little sound that Hans is making, which is the main theme for the villain. I mean, you just get, you know, I would have gotten fired before I even started, you know. And Chris has a way of protecting my outrageous ideas, and he will go, you know, he will go and fight for me, and he will go and fight for those ideas, because he gets, you know, because we do collaborate so closely together. He does get it that we need to inspire each other. And, you know, together. I mean, and it's not just me, you know, it's everybody from, you know, the great Australian Lee Smith, you know, to who, by the way, I worked with. God, I don't know when I started working with Lee. It must have been in the 90s with Peter Weir in Sydney. You know, that's when we first started working together. So the whole team, you know, I mean, it's a 100% total commitment. You know, and one of the things which always bugs me is, you know, everybody now goes, oh, Chris Nolan, you know, he can just, you know, oh, he's young, you know, he's had all the success, he can just waltz into Warner Brothers and, you know, get the money to go and do this movie. But it's not quite like that. First of all, Dunkirk is a seriously experimental movie. I mean, it's sort of an art house movie. Secondly, other than, you know, Australians and the English and, you know, maybe if the Canadians, people don't really know about this historical moment in time, you know, so it's meaningless in America. And none that, you know, and it's a Second World War movies, or, you know, which seems truly sort of irrelevant to, you know, doing a you know, this is day and age of superhero movies. So Chris manages to go and make that movie against all the odds, and manages to make it a box office success. And maybe you can say, okay, quite a few people might have gone because they're Chris Nolan fans on the first weekend, but it was beyond the first weekend. He managed to make something which was interesting, compelling, new, fresh, and people went to go and see it, you know. And I think that's great filmmaking. If you can be artistic and at the same time be commercially successful. I mean, that's everybody's dream, and most people don't manage to do that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's why I want to work with him.
Yeah, you got it, and hopefully he will continue to do so. But you then took on Blade Runner this year as well, and which is, I mean, it makes sense because you've done a lot of fantasy sci-fi, but for me, if it was me, I would be so daunted given the Vangelis original and, you know, everything that comes along with Blade Runner.
I didn't take on Blade Runner. I did not take on Blade Runner. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you the truth.
Please.
I was going to go on tour. I was going to finish Dunkirk and go on tour, and the phone rings, and it's the editor, Joe Walker, and he said, "Look, we're a bit stuck here. Do you mind if Denis Villeneuve and I come over and see you?" And I said, absolutely not. I'm going on tour. Anyway, Blade Runner, I mean, you know, you don't want to touch that. It's Vangelis. And Vangelis, you know, I used to know Vangelis pretty well when both of us lived in London. You know, we used to see each other quite a bit. And the way I remember it, which might not be entirely correct, but it's very close to correct. I put the phone down. 10 minutes later, my door gets shoved open and Joe and Denis walk in and they say, would it make a difference if we said, what about getting Ben Walfish involved? And all we want for you to do is, you know, let's just talk about this. Let's tell us what our problems are. And look, Joe, again, this is history. You know, Joe and I started working. The first thing we ever worked together on was in 1988 on a BBC thing. So, you know, when you go back with people, it's very hard to go and say to them, go away. But actually, so Ben came in because Ben, you know, Ben is in the building next door to me, and I'm always in awe of his musicianship. I'm always in awe of him as a composer, and he happens to be a mate. So yes, they cleverly opened the door in more ways than one. Except I said to them, you know, after we were chatting for a bit, you know, I said to them, well, let's see it then. And they both sort of looked at each other and went, Well, actually, we've only just put a cut together ourselves, and we haven't even looked at it. And I said, well, I'm going to go on tour. It's now, this was sort of, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the evening. I said, it's now or never. Get the cut over here. So, which was interesting because it was weirdly their first experience of watching the movie themselves, and they had Ben and me in the room. So, they were now put on a spot, and we get to the end of it, and I look, I'm sitting pretty much where I was sitting, and I don't know if you can see, but there's a keyboard right there, and we get to the end of it, and rather than speaking or saying anything, I just had this sound and this tune in my head, and I just started playing, and I saw sort of Denise's face light up. So I knew I was heading in the right direction. So rather than it being, like what I was just saying about Chris, where we started off with this very theoretical discussion, I was speaking to them in the language that I'm the most comfortable in. I was playing music. I was coming up with thoughts, and then Ben got on the piano, and then the whole and one of the things you need to know is Joe Walker, the editor. He went to a Royal College of Music, so he's a very good musician himself, and his cutting style is very musical. So, and Denis is such a first of all, he's such a gentleman, and second of all, he's just the way he introduces his ideas to you and the way he collaborates with you is just the only way I can describe it is by the end of the evening of just jamming and coming up with ideas and what about this and textures, etc. Denis was in the band, and I felt like I was, I just met him, but I felt I'd known him all my life, and we were going to be brothers for the rest of our life. And the next day I went on the road, and from then on there was a lot of back and forth with, emails and files being sent and things being done on the bus after a gig, etc. And then I had a 10-day break after after coming back from Australia. I mean, as an aside, whoever did our touring schedule, flying from Perth to Helsinki is a really bad idea.
What are you doing? That's terrible.
I know. So I was truly knackered by the time I got back to LA for the 10-day break before the American part of the tour started. And all I did was all day, all night, work with Ben and Denis. But it was really, Ben by that point had been really digging in and had come up with amazing things. He absolutely came up with the central theme. And partly it was quite good that I'd been away, or had some distance to it, because I could just look at things which seemed insurmountable problems to them and just go, well, what about if we just tried? It was quite easy for me to have a clear objective thing. And, plus, don't see this as arrogant, but I've done more movies than any of them had. So the weird thing is like you learn something on every movie, and you bring it. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday about Dunkirk. That doing my Jim Brooks comedies in a funny way taught me something that came in handy in Dunkirk. It's not about the comedy, but it's just about how you approach the scene, etc. All these little things you learn on the way of having done all that stuff. So sometimes, it just became, it wasn't really me sitting there and writing. It was literally just suggesting, oh, well, if we just change this chord to this or whatever. And then came a point where it's interesting, because every musician has their own feel, and I became and I loved it. I became Ben's keyboard player at a certain stage. You know, Ben, who is this amazing, classically trained everything, but there's a certain feel that comes when I play the notes, you know. So, and it felt really good for a while not to be the boss. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But to literally, okay, Ben, tell me what to play next, and Denis sitting there, and you know, seeing them react to you know, to the performance.
Yeah.
And there's one other part. Denis was very, you know, was very adamant, and quite rightly so, that the music should be linked to the Vangelis, to Vangelis, you know, and really, if you think about it, I mean, it's just which orchestra you pick, you know. It's Vangelis's orchestra happens to be these synthesizers, and so we wrote a score with the same, you know, similar palette of sounds and similar devices, etc. And so that became the orchestra, plus the idea that it's not 100 people in an orchestra playing, but it's Ben and me, or in Vangelis's case, it was just Vangelis playing. So that already got us into a territory which seemed an appropriate link to the past. And then there was, we haven't really told people this much, but I'll tell you, I actually wrote a letter to Vangelis saying, come on, old friend, just for old time's sake, you know, can you come and can we do this together? Can you come and be part of the band? And I actually got Denis and Joe to fly to Paris and talk to him about it. But it just didn't work out time-wise, you know. And I wished, you know, and it was part of the, it wasn't just the respect which I have for him, you know, and I can't even tell you how much respect I have for him. You know, it's the guy is an absolute genius. But it was partly, it would have been nice for old time's sake. Does that make sense? Yeah, get all your mates into a room and make some music.
Yeah. And just go crazy. You know, switching gears, we have to talk about your Oscar win in 1995. So almost 23, I think, years ago by the time that you won that. And I've had the benefit of watching that ceremony on numerous occasions. I remember you being really
I've never seen it.
Really? You've never seen it?
I can't do it.
I can imagine. Well, I remember you saying you thanked your daughter because you were cool, because you had done The Lion King, and you also said writing a score is much easier than this, and then you walked off.
It was just like, oh no, it was just like, you know, get me out of here. You know, I mean, the speaking in front of people is terrifying. I mean, that's why I did this tour, because all my mates, all my musician mates ganged up on me and said, okay, here's the thing. You've been sitting in this dark windowless room for 40 years, writing music that's performed not in real time and with all the help of images, you know, and you got all these, you know, you got the movie supporting your music in a way. It's time you looked your audience in the eye, and you owe it to your audience. And I'm going, yeah, but I got jet lag. Not jet lag. Yeah, I had jet lag after Perth to Helsinki. No, but you know, I got stage fright, and they're going, every musician has stage fright. Get over yourself. And so I was basically chucked out of the studio, you know, and I had to go and. But you know, but I did justify it in a, you know, beyond just having this connection with the, or owing it to the audience. You know, one of the things I was thinking about is I'm in a pigeonhole. You know, everybody goes, Hans Zimmer, oh, he writes film music. You know, it's like, and I thought, well, can't it just be music? You know, it's like, why do we all have to be in these little boxes? And so when they said the Coachella Festival invited us, which I thought was incredibly daring of them, you know, I said, okay, no, let's give this a go. I mean, nobody's ever dragged a choir and a big orchestra out into the desert. So that seemed like an interesting experiment. And it wasn't, you know, a film-centric or film music-centric audience. And we played the festival twice. And I went, oh yeah, this can work. This is working. This is working. This is actually, this can stand on its own 2 feet. Because the other thing I did was I had not a single image from the films projected. I just wanted it to be about the musicians. I wanted it because, hey, since they made me go on this tour, I said, well, you better come along. And I just wanted to show, off these amazingly talented people I'd worked with all my life.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's like, you've had so many nominations across the board. You've had 10 Oscar nominations, you've had Golden Globes and Grammys and all that stuff. But winning that Oscar, what does it mean to you to win accolades and to receive that kind of recognition? Does it mean something to you, or do you not care about it? Like, how do you feel about it?
Look, it's a complicated thing. Everybody's life is the same. Everybody's life is the same, whereby good things happen to you during the day, and then bad things happen to you, and things which upset you, right? And then this artificial thing is being created, which is the award. And, you know, I know they used to say, everybody here is a winner, but it's not true. You know, by the end of the evening, 4/5 of the people sitting there are not winners. And you know, and however steadfast you are, and however much you know that you're not doing it, you're not doing any of it for winning an award, but you're doing it because, you know, and this is the thing that I loved about being on this tour. I actually got to see people's faces, and that I was playing music for them, because, you know, again, I mean, look, life is hard. Life gets harder than you can, you know, it seems to get harder all the time. And so I feel there's a huge responsibility that we have when we make films, that come the weekend and somebody puts their hard-earned money down to go and see our movie, we better deliver an experience. We better have done the work. We better not have, you know, we better not be lazy about it. So for me, the true award is, you know, somebody enjoyed the movie and they actually paid for it, and you know, and I honor the hard work they put into coming to see the movie. But do you know what I mean? There's this weird thing you can't escape. It's like some primal thing, you know. You know, I've won once and I've lost 9 times, or whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, something like that, right? So whatever, it shouldn't mean something to you, but it does mean something, because, you know, look, it's not just pride, it's just, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, and then you get incredibly wonderful and gracious moments. I remember being nominated for Inception, and I'm on the way to the Oscars, and I get a text from Trent Reznor going, Hans, I absolutely love your Inception score. I just wish you had written it in a different year, because he was up for Social Network and he absolutely thought I was going to win. And so I loved that he won. Does that make sense? Because he was so collegial and gracious and you know, and just sweet about it. You know, it was just musician to musician, you know. And he didn't have to send that text, you know. It's just so these sort of things are great, you know.
Yeah.
And what am I complaining about? I'm not actually complaining about anything, right? But yeah. I'm just saying, you know, it does do it does do funny things to you. So I don't even want to know when the Oscar nominations are. I don't want to know about this stuff, you know. I just want to go and lock myself in my room and do good work.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't pick a movie because, you know, it has an Oscar chance. I mean,
No.
you know, look however much we pretend to be confident. You know, there were moments on Dunkirk where we really felt, you know, that we couldn't pull it off. You know, and I mean, and it wasn't just moments. Some of those moments would drag on for days.
Wow.
You know, and you just go, uh-oh, it's too late to turn back. It's too late to phone the studio and say, we made a little faux pas here. Can we just scrap the whole thing and, you know, we'll do another superhero movie for you.
Yeah, yeah,
you can't do that, you know? And
no.
And again, you know, I have to come back to this. This is Chris Nolan's film. And when I was writing, it didn't matter if he was sitting in the room with me or if he was not sitting in the room with me. Every note, everything, every gesture, every sound I made, I felt Chris was like his hand was on top of mine. You know, so you know, and I think what I love about the score is that it's truly integrated into the movie. And I feel nearly disloyal to the process or disloyal to the adventure that we had or disloyal to how we worked, that we're now talking about a single element as opposed to the thing as a whole, which is the thing we managed to achieve.
Yeah, it is a special score. We're running out of time. I was going to ask you about 3 timelines and how challenging that would have been. Like, because if I was composing this, I'd be thinking, this is going to be really tough. What was your reaction?
No!
Just before we run out of time, like, what did you think of that?
No. Because, see, here's the thing. Chris wrote the screenplay like a piece of music. You know, by using the idea of the shepherd tone, which is a musical device, in the structure of the screenplay, you know, he'd already set the form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he was already telling me the shape of the music to come, because he had written a piece of music. You know, and it's just, he didn't use notes. He used words and images and editing, you know, and I used notes to basically paraphrase the structure that he had already established. And he was very, very clear, and it was very clear to me when I read the thing that in a funny way, what he'd done was he'd sort of stepped on my toes in the best possible way. He'd already, you know, because usually I'm the one sitting there going, okay, what's going to be the musical shape of this thing? You know, how are we going to go and do something, you know, in Act 1 that we're going to pay off in Act 3, etc. You know, and what's my big, my big arc? He'd already done that. So the 3 timelines, and the 3 timelines made perfect sense to me, because it really was the only way you could tell that story and the experience of what was going on in the air, on the ground, and in the sea.
Yeah. Okay, final question, because I really could keep you here all day, Hans. You know, we all have scores that we care about and adore and love because they mean something to us emotionally. I could rattle off a whole bunch of them, but for your scores, Interstellar holds a very deep place in my heart, and I love it. I listen to it all the time. I'm wondering, when you look back at that work of art, what are you most proud of?
To be really honest, okay, here I don't know. The reason I keep writing is just because I keep hoping one day I'm going to write the piece of music where I'm going to be satisfied and I'm going to go, oh, that's not so bad, right? So most of the scores, I can't listen to them because they drive me crazy, because all I can think about is that, oh, if I had only done this, or you know, etc. You know, that stuff. Interstellar is one of the few scores I like, and I like it out of, you know, you started to talk to me at the beginning, why do I want to work with Chris Nolan, and ultimately it comes down to friendship. And Interstellar was all about family. I mean, it started off with Chris tricking me into writing something. I mean, everybody sort of knows the story, so I don't have to go into the story anymore. But he tricked me into writing something really about a father and a son, you know, and he knows my son, Jake, very well. So I was constantly writing from a father's perspective about my children. So in a peculiar way, just like Lion King is a love letter to my daughter, my oldest daughter, because she was 6 at the time, Interstellar is a love letter to my children now, you know. And so, I mean, you have to remember that the great thing about working with filmmakers who recognize it is that the only place I can work from is if it's deeply personal to me. I have to find something deeply personal that I want to say, and otherwise there's no way you can do the hours, you can do the work. You know, personal life doesn't exist. You know, completely wrecked. I mean, weekends, you know, doesn't exist. You have no idea how I'm scrambling right now to try to sort of make Christmas happen because I got notes to write. You know. So that's my life, you know, but some filmmakers, more than others, allow me to, I suppose, express myself, express what is, you know, what is really important to me, and express it in a way that, you know, they don't censor the way I write. They, you know, they don't, you know, I write, you know, Interstellar, I would write the piece. I mean, the whole opening of the film, I had an idea for a piece of music, and I was writing the piece of music, and it goes all the way from the opening until the rockets lift off or something. But we didn't really, and Chris came in, and literally the piece stops because he came through the door and I stopped writing. And so and we never picked up on it because we sent it over to Lee Smith, you know, the editor, and he just took it from the end where the rockets take off and just laid it in, and it just, everything made sense. Everything hit everything, because you know, when you work with filmmakers who have a similar temperament or similar aesthetic or similar whatever it is, or you know, they want to tell the story in the same way you want to tell the story, these things will happen. I didn't have to change a note in Interstellar. You know, it was because it came from truly a place of, you know, I love my kids. You know.
Yeah, and it comes across, I think.
Yeah, I just don't want them to know that, because otherwise,
No.
for Christmas.
No, we don't do that. Hans, thank you so much for your time. I hope
It's
to
been a
see you on
pleasure.
the Oscar stage for Dunkirk. You deserve it, and thanks for your time again, and good luck.
No, thank you. Have a good summer and have a lovely Christmas.